NASA countdown. A NASA countdown. 10 seconds.
T-minus.
Good evening. I'm Rebecca Hawthorne, President of the League of Women Voters of the Wayzata-Plymouth area. I'd like to welcome our candidates, our audience, and our viewers on behalf of the League of Women Voters, Wayzata-Plymouth area, and our co-hosts, the League of Women Voters, Crystal, New Hope, East Plymouth, and Robbinsdale, and the League of Women Voters, Brooklyn Park, Osseo, and Maple Grove. The League of Women Voters is a 104-year-old volunteer nonpartisan organization that encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates, not those of the League of Women Voters. It is our purpose in sponsoring forums such as this to provide you with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss face-to-face the issues that are important to you. And now I'd like you to ask to silence your electronic devices if you've not done already. And I'd like to introduce you to your moderator for this evening's forum, Deb Brinkman, a member of the League of Women Voters, St. Louis Park.
Good evening. Tonight's forum is provided to give you the opportunity to learn about the candidates running for House District 42A and 42B. There's never enough time to cover all of the issues in a setting such as this. If your questions were not addressed, please feel free to contact the candidate directly. The League of Women Voters posts complete, unedited recordings of its forums. Editing is authorized only for official media reporting. Only the full unedited recording may be used by other persons and organizations. The rules for this evening's forum are as follows. Candidates will be allowed an opening statement with a maximum of 1 minute to state their experiences, platform, and objectives. A question and answer period will follow the opening statements. The answers will be confined to 1 minute unless designated by the moderator. Questions will be answered in a rotating order. A 15-second warning will be given to the candidates. The candidates will also be given a 2-minute closing statement. Candidates, please finish your sentences quickly when you see the stop sign, or you might get interrupted. No reference of a personal nature will be tolerated. A person's public record may be examined, but not their character. This forum is made available to encourage the voting public to focus on the issues and not on personalities. We ask that there be no demonstrations in support of or opposition to the candidates or their positions, and the candidates be allowed their full time to get their points across. The public has been encouraged to submit questions online in advance of this forum. For those in the audience, if you have a question, please write it on a 3x5 card available from our volunteers and raise your hand to have it picked up. The timekeeper will alert the moderator when 30 seconds have elapsed. Questions that are unclear, hostile, or of a personal nature will not be used. Those that fall in the same general area may be consolidated. The candidates running for House District 42A are Kathy Burkett and Ned Carroll. The candidates running for House District 42B are Ginny, Klevorn, and Perry Nouis. House District 42B candidate Jenny Klevorn is unable to attend but has asked the moderator to read her opening statement. As stated in our candidate participation policy, we will proceed with House District 42A candidate Ned Carroll and Kathy Burkett, and House 42B candidate Perry Nouis. We'll begin by asking candidates to give their opening statement. Starting with House District 42A, Kathy Burkett.
Thank you. My name is Kathy Burkett. Do I need to do this? Save my time, because I didn't test this. Can you hear me, folks? Okay. All right. My name is Kathy Burkett. I want well-being for every Minnesotan. From affordability to human trafficking to schools to crime, our politicians keep getting it wrong. Political dockets and personal agendas do little for the well-being of everyday Minnesotans, our children, our families, or our businesses. We do not have a revenue problem. We pay plenty in taxes, and St. Paul has plenty of our money. St. Paul has a spending problem, a big one, and it's irresponsible. The solution offered is more tax on gas, delivery services, higher costs for car tabs, fishing licenses, capital gains, payrolls. You get the picture. This burden is on the shoulders of normal folks, people who deserve better. Minnesotans need an advocate that thinks of their well-being. As your state representative, I will advocate for you. As the politicians have proven, they do not understand what the average citizens want and what we deal with daily. That is why I say, vote citizen, not politician.
Thank you, Kathy. Ned Carroll, please.
Thank you. And let me tell you how much I appreciate the League doing this forum. They're great events, and you provide an important public service, so thank you very much. I'm State Representative Ned Carroll from Plymouth, and I'm running for re-election to my House seat. My district includes the west half of Plymouth and southwest Maple Grove. I want to continue my advocacy and work for our communities. I am not a politician. I'm a public servant. I was on city council before. It was a nonpartisan position, and I took that oath seriously. I'm trying to take that to St. Paul and continue my work as a public servant. I was successful in getting a bill passed to help fund the reconstruction of Chancada Trail, formerly County Road 47. It's a 100-year-old major road that was serious need of reconstruction. I was also successful in getting other bills passed too, including the Solar App Plus bill thank you.
Thank you, Ned. Perry Nouis, please.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, and glad to see everyone here this evening. Thank you so much for the invitation. My name is Perry Nouis. I'm running for state representative in House District 42B. My wife Jean and I, in 2 days, will have been married 42 years. We have 4 children, 4 grown children, 8 grandchildren. They're scattered everywhere. We have a son in Canada. We've got a daughter in Sweden. We've got a daughter in Huntsville, Alabama, and we've got a daughter outside Philadelphia. So if we want to see our kids and grandkids, we have to do a lot of traveling. I'm a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel. I spent 24 years in the U.S. military, 3 years as an Army enlisted soldier, and 21 years as an Air Force officer. I spent my career 6 years in Germany, Korea, all over the United States, and spent a great time traveling the world, serving the country, and had a very wonderful career. Very, very proud of it. Grew up in Little Falls originally. My wife and I moved to Plymouth 8 years ago because of the quality of life. We love it here, and looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, Perry. Now I will read the opening statement from House Candidate District 42B candidate Ginny Klevorn. This is from Ginny. During my time as a candidate and your state representative, I have always welcomed the invitation to participate in the LWV, or League of Women Voters Forum, and I have participated in 4 debates hosted by the League. This year, I am unable to be with you as I am celebrating my son's wedding. I ask for your understanding in my prioritizing my son's wedding, a choice I'm confident you would also support. As your state representative, I have worked to uplift your voices at the Capitol in St. Paul. My work for Plymouth and Medicine Lake is focused on issues that matter most to our families: education, public safety, economic development, and protecting reproductive health care. This year, I've been honored with multiple awards for working with our cities and counties to deliver results for Minnesotans all across our state. I'm Ginny Klevorn, your state representative, asking for your vote on November 5th. Visit ginnyclevorn.com for more information. Now, we will start with questions, and you will be answering in a rotating order. Perry Nouis, we will start with you with the first question.
Sure.
And the topic is on the bonding bill. The 2024 Minnesota Legislature was unable to find bipartisan support for an infrastructure bill to fund water treatment plants, roads, bridges, university buildings, and other public works projects. What is your position on funding infrastructure, and how would you work across the aisle to enact such legislation?
Yeah, I think that was pretty shocking that they weren't able to fund a bonding bill after they had an $18 billion surplus. They could have funded that out of those funds. Why they didn't do it, I think, is a wonderful question. And I wish my opponent was here to answer that, why they weren't able to do that when they had $18 billion that they decided to spend elsewhere. So that's one of the reasons. I support bonding. I think it's a very important function of government to fund infrastructure. But as Kathy pointed out earlier, money's not an issue as far we have a taxing machine here in Minnesota. Somehow they tax everything to the point where they got an $18 billion surplus. I hope that number sinks in. And where did they spend that money? That's a good question. It's scattered about. Some of it came back to the taxpayers. Most of it did not. It went to spend some other priorities. So I think it's a wonderful question for voters. Why didn't they fund those things when they had the money?
Thank you. And Ned Carroll, please.
Thank you. Can you repeat the question?
Yes. The 2024 Minnesota Legislature was unable to find bipartisan support for an infrastructure bill to fund water treatment plants, roads, bridges, university buildings, and other public works projects. What is your position on funding infrastructure, and how would you work across the aisle to enact such legislation?
Well, I'm on the Capital Investment Committee, and so I'm part and parcel of that process. That was my number one committee request, because I wanted to bring bonding money back to Plymouth. We send plenty of tax revenue to the state and get precious little in return. I wanted to kind of even that out a little bit, obviously not dollar for dollar, but I wanted to provide some sort of parity. So I was successful in getting money for Chancada Trail, formerly County Road 47, a 100-year-old road desperately in need of reconstruction and repair. So the reason it didn't pass was because surprise politics. And we dealt with it in the House. When it went over to the Senate, the other party wasn't cooperating and killed it.
Thank you. Kathy Burkett, please.
I think that's interesting that the other party killed it when they don't have the majority. So I'm not going to pretend like I understand that, but I question that. I think that it's really important that we pay attention to the basics that people need. We need our water, we need our roads, we need things to work. I honestly don't know exactly how all of this works. I am a citizen, not a politician, and I have not been involved in those processes. I do wonder, however, how the Met Council is involved with that. They're an appointed council that has the right of taxation and eminent domain, and they are involved with a lot of these issues. And we don't have a voice or a vote when it comes to dealing with them. They don't need to listen to us, and we have no recourse. So as far as this is concerned, I will reach around the aisle or across the aisle. People need water. We need roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Next, our next question will be on education. Ned, we'll start with you for this question. Few Minnesota schools, including charter schools, have gone unscathed from the effects of inflation, higher than usual salary increases, and lagging state aid. If elected, what would be your view of state education funding and whether to reduce, remain, or increase it?
Well, I think first of all, education is critically important to the state, everyone in the state. We all benefit from it, whether we have kids in the schools or not. We have to educate our kids, and so we have to provide funding for it. What the appropriate level is remains to be seen, but it's a growing need. It'll always be a growing need, and we need to provide a world-class education for the kids in our state.
Thank you, Ned. Kathy Burkett, please.
Well, it's been a while since I've been involved in the school district, but my understanding when I was there is that the funding does lag at least a year behind. But one thing I would like to bring up about our schools is that while knocking on a door, a young man answered, and it turns out he was a senior. I asked him, what are your issues? And he said, there's a discipline problem with unruly students making it difficult for everybody else. Our government schools have set our students up to fail. Half of Minnesota students are not proficient at grade level in reading, are at math, and a proficiency below 40% in science. On average, 15% of the kids don't graduate. Worse for children of color. These students may never be capable of self-sufficiency, much less providing care for others. This young man's concerns included teachers focused on more agendas than subject material. This is no surprise. My opponent favors mandates, forcing endorsement of DEI agendas just to get their Tier 3 licenses.
Thank you, Kathy. Your time is up. Thank you very much. And Perry Nouis, please.
Our schools are well funded. Over half of the state budget goes to K through 12 and higher education. It seems like every time they come up with a surplus, more of the money will go towards education than any other budget item. As Kathy pointed out, some of the most well-funded schools in the state of Minnesota are here in the Twin Cities area. Their state aid is considerably higher than rural Minnesota, and yet their performance from their students is where half are proficient in reading. Some of the kids in some school districts have none proficient in math. The performance isn't there, the achievement isn't there. So I'm wondering more of what is the focus of education? I don't believe that money is the issue.
Thank you, Perry. And Perry, we'll start with you with this next question. The topic is on safety. Many are concerned with crime in our communities. What legislation, such as safe storage or reporting lost or stolen firearms, if any, would you support regarding public safety?
Well, I start with the phrase shall not be infringed in the Second Amendment. I'm a very strong supporter of the Second Amendment, and I don't understand why so many people struggle with that. All guns are assault weapons. And I think that every time there's a law passed, first of all, criminals don't care what your laws are. They're the ones that are causing the problem. The legal and lawful gun owners are not the problem. And it seems to me that everything that gets passed down is an infringement on legal and lawful firearm holders. I own a gun. When I went through the concealed carry program or licensing, I was shocked at the laws that protect the criminals. I think we need to look at that and change that. That's one of the reasons I'm running.
Thank you, Perry. Ned Carroll, please.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. Many are concerned with crime in our communities. What legislation, such as safe storage or reporting lost or stolen firearms, if any, would you support regarding public safety?
Thank you. I talked with the city manager today. The police chief was not available. Crime is not up in Plymouth. In fact, it's down. But that doesn't matter. One crime is too many. So I'm obviously opposed to crime, and hopefully I think everyone on this diocese as well. Mm-hmm. I voted for those two bills, and the reason is we have to do something about all this gun crime, all these crimes that are committed with guns and assault rifles and everything like that. The Second Amendment is not absolute, just like speech is not absolute. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. There are reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions that are appropriate and constitutionally valid. So I voted for them. I support them. We have to do something about this gun crime.
Thank you, Ned.
Thank you.
Kathy Burkett, please.
I'm going to ask you to repeat that.
Yes.
Again.
Many are concerned with crime in our communities.
Yeah.
What legislation, such as safe storage or reporting lost or stolen firearms, if any, would you support regarding public safety?
Well, crime, I hear a lot about. Last week and one day when I was door knocking in a couple of different areas, I heard 6 people concerned about what's going on with crime here in Plymouth. Part of it is that it's not getting reported or they're not being arrested It's just not being dealt with. But when it comes to safe storage, one of the things that I am concerned about is if I recall correctly, they want a firearm kept in one room and the ammunition in another. I'm telling you, if somebody's coming through the door, how are we supposed to protect our families? How do we protect ourselves? And this is legislation that does not protect the people. If there's an emergency, what do you do? I'm not okay with that.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, we'll go on to our next question. Kathy, you'll be the first to respond to this question, and the topic is on the budget surplus. If elected, what would your priorities be for using a state budget surplus?
Well, number one, I think that we're already taxed enough. As far as Plymouth or Minnesota, we're like number 5 in the nation. And our businesses are number 1 in the nation for being taxed. Why are we being taxed to the point we have a surplus? I think that what I would do, however, is address what it is that the people of Plymouth are asking about. They're concerned about affordability of everything. You name it. And then I'm also hearing a lot in crime and the illegal immigration. I'm here, those kind of flip back and forth. So I would work towards what those items. Also, the other things I'm hearing about are schools. And we have a lot of money there already. We just need to use it wisely.
Thank you, Kathy. And Perry Nouis, please.
Well, I think I touched on it a little bit earlier. I said that, they had the money at the time. Why didn't they use it for some of the infrastructure needs? Quite frankly, if there's a surplus, I'd like to give it back to the people that we got it from in the form of reduced taxes. I think when they found the surplus, this $18 billion that was sitting out there, instead of going out there and finding out, well, who can we give it back to, they went ahead and spent it. It's kind of like finding a wallet, and instead of finding the owner, they go ahead and decided to, what can we fund and use it that way. And that's what they did. So my goal is to not have surpluses, get everything funded that's needed, and keep taxes as low as they possibly can be to get those functions done. I'm all for limited government, and I believe that our government is growing at an unsustainable rate. Grew 40% over 2 years. $52 billion to $72 billion. And we need to make sure that we rein that in before it gets totally unsustainable.
Thank you, Perry. Ned Carroll, please.
All right, I'm going to do it again. Please repeat the question.
Yes, if elected, what would your priorities be for using a state budget surplus?
Thank you. Well, let me just respond to some of these other comments. We have a small surplus. The $18 billion surplus that we did have, 12 of that was made up with federal funds. So we really had 12 billion, or excuse me, 8 billion.
Only.
Are comments allowed to be made?
No, we should.
Would you please respond as moderator?
Sure. Please do not interrupt anybody that's speaking.
Thank you. So we have a small surplus coming up. What I would do with it is reinvest it, give some back. There was a lot of tax relief in the previous legislature. It was targeted tax relief. It wasn't big tax cuts, but it was very targeted. So that's how I would do it. I would look at our priorities and fund those.
Thank you, Ned. And Ned, we'll start with you with his next question. The topic will be on the ERA. Do you support the adoption of a ballot issue to add the ERA to the Minnesota State Constitution? Why or why not? And what language should or should not be included?
Yes, I do support it. As a father of 3 daughters and my wonderful wife who's sitting here, I certainly do support it. My mother, who passed away some time ago, she was a Republican. And she believed in equal rights. She acted with equal rights. And she couldn't understand why we didn't have equal rights. So I'm certainly in support of it. In terms of the precise language, I know there was some various versions floating around this past session, but I would look at just the basic amendment and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ned. Kathy Burkett, please.
Would you mind repeating the question, please?
Yes. Do you support the adoption of a ballot issue to add the ERA to the Minnesota state constitution? Why or why not? What language should or should not be included?
I think it's really pretty simple. If we look at our Constitution of the United States, everybody is equal. And I'm not familiar with the language, but my understanding is that this does not favor women and can put women at risk with private spaces. It's not religion friendly. And so that's my concern. The United States Constitution already gives us our equal rights. And I may be off on this, but if I'm remembering right what the ERA amendment is, but we have equal rights already.
Thank you, Kathy. Perry Nouis, please.
I'm trying to understand what rights they don't have. My wife of 42 years, I have 3 daughters. I'm trying to figure out, I see a woman running for president. We have 2 senators. I see female congressmen. I'm wondering, what rights do they not have? It seems to me that the Constitution applies to everyone. I must be missing something, and if there are instances of discrimination, I believe we already have existing laws that address that. So if it goes on a ballot, I'd like to see what wording. I don't have any wording to offer as to what I'd like to see or not see in an amendment. But as far as I can tell, the Constitution applies to everyone, or laws apply to everyone. Just kind of curious of what's behind pushing this effort.
Thank you, Perry. And Perry, we'll start with you with this next question. The topic will be on the sports gaming bill. Do you support or oppose legislation of mobile sports betting in Minnesota? Please explain your position.
Well, it's something that's taking off countrywide. I got to imagine that Minnesota doesn't want to be left out of that. It's one of the biggest things that we see right now. We're watching any sporting event. You'll see you can make bets during the middle of the games, betting on who's going to get a hit or you name it. And Minnesota, I don't think, wants to be left out on that. So I would support something to that effect. I enjoy sports. I watch a lot of it. I know a lot of people are heavily involved with it. I do think it might get to a point where there's a problem with it, and it can get out of hand. But as far as making it available and accessible, I'm all about people having choices. And quite frankly, I don't see where there's a real problem with that at the moment. So I would support it.
Thank you, Perry. Ned Carroll, please.
Thank you. It's an interesting issue. It's one that I need to learn more about, but I tell you, I have problems with it because of problem gambling. People can get addicted and get into serious financial problems. So I'd want to make sure that there's some guardrails on it. That said, this does not affect charitable gambling, like our local service organizations have in various establishments around the area. And it should not affect them because they provide an important public service, and it's limited to the amount at risk.
Thank you, Ned. Kathy Burkett, please.
Well, I will echo what Perry has said. I'm just trying to go back in the recesses of my mind. I do believe that that funding for the environmental trust that's come up for renewal is funded through gambling, is it not? Mm-hmm. And so I have just an issue with that particular amendment that has been put on the ballot, and that's because it is assigned, people are appointed, and they're going to be spending more money out of that budget. And when you have an appointed unit like that, and it's like 4 Native, 4 of color, and a couple others. But the thing is that we have no voice and we have no vote when they're appointed, and they don't have to respond to us, we the people, and we have no way of getting them off. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And on our next question, Kathy, we'll start with you.
Okay.
The topic will be on child care. Child care is critical to our labor markets. What, if anything, should the legislature do regarding access and availability to quality and affordable child care of working families throughout Minnesota?
Okay, would you mind? There's so much packed into there. Thank you.
Child care is critical to our labor markets.
Yep.
What, if anything, should the legislature do regarding access and availability to quality and affordable child care for working families throughout Minnesota?
Well, when it comes to childcare, it's really an important product. The thing is that the state has really gotten in the way when it comes to private childcare. I had a gal come up to me and say, you know what? They want me to put 9 inches of mulch all over my whole yard. They want me, it's like she just kept naming off all these different things as a private citizen that was having, doing childcare out of her home. Unrealistic expectations cost a lot of money, and for what reason? I also had another gal tell me she was cited because her grass was too pokey. Her grass is too pokey. The state needs to get out and let people take care of kids. I don't have anything wrong against, large childcare companies, but let us do our own thing as citizens.
Thank you, Kathy.
Oh, she's over there.
Perry Nouis, please.
Child care is a huge issue. So just like everything else, the prices have shot up, the cost of it, and most of it, in the case of child care, is due to legislative mandates from the legislature. Things that have been imposed, just like education, they impose like 60 mandates on schools, unfunded, by the way. And in child care, they are forcing mandates or forcing things like you have to have a certain fire door between your house and your attached garage and things like that. And people are being forced with, pay thousands of dollars to change their homes, their facilities, in order to abide by legislative mandates. And I think that that's where the legislature oversteps their bounds. I'm sure we're going to hear a safety argument, but I think that has a lot to do with the cost of child care. And I think the more things we allow people to make decisions on their own to run their businesses, the more accessible and affordable those things will be for the working families that are out there.
Thank you, Perry. Ned Carroll, please.
Thank you. Well, obviously, child care is critically important to the state, critically important to our district. There's a shortage of child care providers. And the reason some of these requirements are there are for the benefit of the children. They're there to protect the children. We've got to keep that in mind. First and foremost, it's not to protect the business, it's to protect the children. And that's why they're there. Some of them may seem silly, but there's reasons for them. So I'm in favor.
Thank you, Ned. Ned, we'll start with you with this next question. The topic will be on inflation. What measures would you support to address the rising living costs experienced by Minnesota residents?
Well, as you may know, inflation is way down. The recent report came out, and I think it's at under 8%, under 5%, and it's around maybe 3 or 4. So it's come down. The Fed is doing its job. There's two things involved here: fiscal policy and monetary policy. The Fed has done its job to bring down inflation and rein in the money supply so that it does. And so what we can do at the state level for inflation is look at enforcing our antitrust laws to prevent price gouging. All these things that were passed in our legislature this year will help a lot.
Thank you, Ned. Kathy Burkett, please.
So Ned brought up spending. I want to just say that Minnesota does not have a revenue problem. We've got a spending problem. And Minnesota don't regard the people of Minnesota so much as citizens, as voters, as with it's just one big ATM. Again, he's responsible for helping spend $18.6 billion surplus, then turned around and raised your taxes and the size of government and spending by another 40%. That, when you average it out, is $6,500 for every taxpayer in this room and every taxpayer across Minnesota. Increased spending, commitments in the next 4 years is $10 billion. That's unsustainable spending, and we need to get it under control. It's going to be difficult because when we Republicans regain power and we start cutting things, we're going to get blamed for things. But we have to stop unsustainable spending, which feeds into inflation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And Kathy, Perry Nouis, please.
Well, the government is responsible for the inflation that we're seeing. 3 years ago, pouring trillions of dollars into the economy, shot up everything, 9% inflation. Yes, it's down to 3-4%, something in that range. But the money was poured out there just everywhere, and everything shot up. And the companies, food suppliers, everybody suppliers, they have to raise or pass their cost on to consumers. And you're all living the effects of that. How do we rein it in? We rein in government. Government is the biggest spender out there, trillions and trillions. And by the way, I'm hearing this federal money, that was talking about the surplus that came about. Most of it was from the federal government. Well, the federal government is broke. Everything's been spent. The federal government is $36 trillion in debt, over $100 trillion in debt in unfunded liabilities that they refuse. I got to stop.
Thank you, Perry. And Perry, we'll start with you with this next question. The topic is on reproductive rights. Reproductive rights remain a hot topic at both the national and state level. What are your views on Minnesota's passage of the legislation protecting reproductive health care decisions and access to care, as well as protecting patients' medical records from prosecution by other states?
Abortion is a constitutionally protected right here in the state of Minnesota. I was disappointed. I'm pro-life. However, I understand that most Minnesotans want women to have access to abortion. There's no question about that. I have no intention, and I don't see any Republicans out there campaigning saying that we're going to take that away. That we recognize that. I do think that when they passed the PRO Act, Democrats passed the PRO Act in the legislature last year, that they went too far. I think that although most Minnesotans agree that they should have access to abortion, that there should be some limit. At some point, that child should have rights. And it shouldn't be allowed up to the point of birth, which the PRO Act does do. And my opponent was one of the co-authors of that PRO Act, House File 1. And I think that went too far. I think that most Minnesotans agree there needs to be access. I agree there needs to be access, but there needs to be some limits. And at some point, every Democrat voted against every Republican amendment that was tried to be made to put some form of reasonable limits on abortion.
Thank you, Perry. Ned Carroll, please.
Thank you. I voted for the PRO Act. I think it was an important piece of legislation and was designed to protect women and their reproductive health choices. It's not my place to make those choices. You do not want me in the exam room with the doctor and the woman. It's none of my business, not my place. And you know what? Abortion doesn't happen in the late stages. If it does, it's to save the life of the mother. And and at that point, the doctor has two patients, the woman and then the unborn child. So there are safeguards in place. I was a little concerned about it initially, and then I found out about it, and I was satisfied with that response. We had the head of OB-GYN from Mayo come in and explain a lot of this, and so I became a supporter.
Thank you, Ned. Kathy Burkett, please.
As Perry said, it is the law. This is still an intimate and personal situation that challenges the moral code embedded within one's religious beliefs. Yet now, our well-being is threatened. New laws endanger the lives of Minnesota women with crucial protections removed and reporting conveniently eliminated. We need transparency and safe environments. We need to reinstate the removed inclusive approach, full disclosure for those who choose abortion, adoption, or to keep their child. Services have been completely eliminated, along with guidelines that ensured the safety of our women. Now, no hospital is required, no doctor is required. How does that provide for the well-being? That's in the second and third trimester as well. How does that provide for the well-being of women?
Thank you, Kathy.
It's not working.
Okay, just a quick announcement. The timekeeper has signaled that 30 minutes has passed, and that ends the time for new questions from the audience. We'll proceed with the next question. Ned, we'll start with you with the next question, and the topic will be on the environment. On the November ballot, Minnesotans will be asked to reauthorize or end a constitutional amendment allocating 40% of state lottery proceeds to the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund. If you support reauthorization, what environmental issues in District 42 need to be addressed? If you do not support reauthorization, how would you allocate the lottery proceeds?
Thank you. I certainly do support it. Being on the Climate and Energy Committee as well as the Capital Investment Committee, I see a lot of needs in not only our district but the entire state for environmental concerns and projects that need to be addressed. In Plymouth, in 42A, which includes Maple Grove, there are water projects, drainage projects, things that aren't particularly sexy, but nonetheless are important. They're critical to the well-being of our community and the operation of it.
Thank you, Ned. Kathy Burkett, please.
Would you repeat the question, please?
On the November ballot, Minnesotans will be asked to reauthorize or end a constitutional amendment allocating 40% of state lottery proceeds to the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund. If you support reauthorization, what environmental issues in District 42 need to be addressed? If you do not support reauthorization, how would you allocate the lottery proceeds?
Well, number one, and when it comes to this particular, I touched on this earlier. This is worded so, in my opinion, deceptively. This will continue to get funding even after this. It hasn't totally come up for renewal. What you want to have is your legislators have a voice in speaking on behalf of how those funds are going to be spent. They will be taking, if this passes, what you're voting for is to have your voice and your vote not heard because it'll be an appointed commission or group, and it will not be your legislators voting for you, for your voice. I'm not for it.
Thank you, Kathy. Perry Nouis, please.
I would not reauthorize it for the simple reason that it is a carve-out. Every nonprofit, every effort out there, every special interest would love to have its own carve-out in our budget. I would rather see that 40% be made available to state legislators to decide on the priorities that need to be addressed at that time. And we take very good care of our environment here. Plymouth is very blessed. We have fantastic parks, great resources in the state here in Plymouth and District 42. I think we're very well maintained, we're well funded, and I believe that it's a mistake to carve out because everybody would like to have their own carve out. I would rather have the legislators representing the people to take that money as it comes available and decide where do we need it now and make that available. Infrastructure. We've talked about it a few times. There's a lot of needs, and we can apply it at that time. But to dedicate it, I think is a mistake.
Thank you, Perry. And this will be our last question, and then we'll proceed to closing remarks. So, Perry, we'll start with you for this last question. What legislative measures, if any, would you support regarding housing, ownership, and rental?
I'm all for house ownership. I hope they can afford it. When I hear that there's a housing shortage, I go, well, why is that? We're in a market economy. Wherever there's a need, there's somebody that usually steps up to fill it. There must be a reason why a need's not being met. And usually when you look into it, you find out that there are so many laws, so many regulations, so many things getting in the way of things being built that it doesn't happen. I'm all for reducing government, reducing the laws that exist in cases for business startups. I realize that here we're very fortunate in Plymouth. We're a very affluent community. We have wonderful housing. I know we have some developments that are being proposed. I just think that it should be left up to developers, work it out in the marketplace. And I do believe that at some point, it becomes a matter of affordability. People can't even afford to pay rent. How are they going to buy a house? So those are questions that I think are out there, and tough one to crack. But I'm all for the market sorting that out.
Thank you, Perry. Kathy Burkett, please.
I'm going to ask you to say that again.
Sure.
Repeat it, please.
What legislative measures, if any, would you support regarding housing, ownership, and rental?
Okay. The government is too involved with business. I was just reading something the other day that you can build a house in Minnesota just on this side of the Wisconsin border. That house, you'll build the exact same house in Wisconsin on the other side of the border. And it costs 20% more right here in Minnesota than it does in Wisconsin. We have too many mandates, too many rules, government's in the way, and costing us money. How can, we're losing people. We're losing people. It's too expensive here. And that's one of the reasons why. So I think that's really getting in the way of house ownership as well as what happens for rentals. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Ned Carroll, please.
Thank you. I'm certainly in favor of more housing. We have a housing crisis, an affordability crisis. If you look at some of these new apartments that are being built in Plymouth, you'll be shocked at the rents. Oftentimes they're $3,000-$4,000, for a 1-2 bedroom, whatever. Not one, but 2 or 3 bedroom. It's incredibly expensive, but they're fine apartments. They're filled with amenities. They're not first-time homeowner housing situation. We could work on NOAA properties, which is naturally occurring affordable housing, to preserve them. It won't answer all the issues, but it'll certainly help. I did that when I was on city council, look for opportunities to invest in housing, to create housing. And we've done that at the legislature. We passed a historic $1 billion housing bill to help with affordability in providing solutions to housing.
Thank you, Ned. Okay, now we will proceed with our closing remarks. We'll reverse the order from when we did the opening remarks. So Perry Nouis, we'll start with you. And a reminder, we'll get to 2 minutes for your closing remark. 2 minutes for your closing remark, Perry.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone for being here this evening. Again, I want to thank you for the invitation to be here. We touched on quite a few issues this evening. I'm glad we're able to do that. It's very important that we get a chance to express our views and get out there and campaign. We weren't able to do this 4 years ago. When I ran 4 years ago for this seat, it was the pandemic, and we couldn't do a lot of door knocking and getting out there and meet a lot of our voters, and we can certainly do that this time. So I'm glad to be a part of the process. As I mentioned at the outset, what my background is, something I didn't mention is that I was on a staff member, a congressional staff member for Congressman Chip Kravac for a couple of years. I ran his constituent services office up in Brainerd. And I worked with local communities, worked with local community leaders, civic organizations, constituents throughout northern Minnesota, ranging from Morrison County to the Canadian border. A lot of experience working with a lot of these issues. I'm very concerned about the direction of the country, concerned about the direction of the state. I do not want to see Minnesota become another California. I believe that the trifecta that is running the state of Minnesota right now, the governorship, all the constitutional officers, the state Senate, the state House, they think they have a overwhelming mandate to just dictate how things are done in the state of Minnesota. And I don't see it that way. They have a 1-seat majority in the state Senate. They had a 4-seat majority in the legislature. And the way the legislature wrapped up this last session was an embarrassment. That's one of the reasons I'm running. I couldn't believe what I saw. Packing in all of these omnibus bills into one bill and then just passing it, a 6-page title. It's out of hand. I want to bring common sense back to how government is run, and it's one of the reasons I'm in this. I'm asking for your support on November 5th. Perry Nouis for MN.com. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Perry. Ned Carroll, please.
Thank you. I'll make this really short. I'm doing this out of an obligation to provide public service, and that's it. I'm not benefiting otherwise. When I was first running for council, a friend of mine asked me, "Why are you running for council?" And I gave her the usual answer. And she says, "That's not really why you're doing it." And I said, "Well, why? What is it then?" She said, "You're doing it because you're an Eagle Scout. That's what Eagle Scouts do. They provide service." That's what I'm looking to do at the legislature. That's what I did this past session, is simply provide public service and provide it the best way I know how, by looking at the issues, talking to people, understanding them, and voting the best way I can. We're using my best judgment to do it, and that's why I'm running. And I hope I have your support for re-election. Thank you.
Thank you, Ned. Kathy Burkett, please.
Elections have consequences. Currently, those consequences have become dire, affecting the well-being of all of us. Minnesota spending is way out of control. They are putting this heavy burden on all of us. Our government schools are failing our children, damaging family structures and futures. Crime is rising directly as a result of policies. Housing costs are up as a result of unfettered immigration and out-of-touch land use and zoning and mandates. The politicians of Minnesota have forgotten that they are here to serve us, instead focusing on ideas that ignore the rights and the needs of we the people, burdening us further. We need to be the catalyst of change. We need to elect citizens, not politicians. We need to send some common sense to the Capitol. That is why I am here, to represent you. Instead of serving the citizens, laws are being written to serve the agendas of politicians and lawyers. They often represent the most out there fringe thinking. Worst of all, we as citizens are played against each other. We have more in common than the politicians would lead us to believe. I believe good stewardship of the environment is extremely important, but telling people what kind of car to drive is not the solution. I believe we need immigrants to build our country, but an open door is not the right way to go about that. We can meet the health needs of all women safely without risk. We can find common sense solutions that are truly effective, not just buzzwords and false paths. I will be representing all of 42A, Plymouth, and Maple Grove, using my common sense and the values that I have been taught as a lifelong Minnesotan. I've been here for over 60 years. That is why I say, elect a citizen, not a politician. My agenda is simple. I want the well-being for all of our children and our families. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. This concludes the House District 42A and 42B Candidate Forum. We close with several thank yous. First, on behalf of the League of Women Voters, please join me in thanking the candidates for being part of the democratic process by running for office and for being willing to serve our community. Thank you also to the League of Women Voters volunteers, our audience here, and to those viewing this event virtually for your participation in this candidate forum. Finally, thank you to the City of Plymouth and their staff for supporting this event, and to CCX Media for broadcasting live streaming, and recording tonight's forum. On-demand viewing can be accessed at lwvwpa.org. For additional election information, we encourage you to visit vote411.org, the League of Women Voters award-winning one-stop shop where voters can register to vote, find their polling place, and learn how candidates stand on issues. Please remember to vote in the November 5th election by absentee ballot or in person. On the November ballot, Minnesota voters will be asked to reauthorize or end a constitutional amendment allocating 40% of state lottery proceeds to the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund. Over 50% of voters must say yes to approve the constitutional protection of the system. Leaving the question blank counts as a no vote. Please be sure to look for the amendment and vote. Early voting is already underway. Your vote is your voice. The League of Women Voters welcomes new members, both men and women, at lwvwpa.org. Thank you and good night. And we will proceed with the Hennepin County Commissioner District 7 Candidate Forum in approximately 5 minutes.